and welcome Recording Earthlings. It's Nora, and today I'm giving a special shout out to all the wonderful and incredible teachers that we have at Orva. Thank you so much for all of the hard work that you do. I really appreciate it. You guys are so amazing. Alright, so a special shout out to Mr. Neal, Mrs. Spencer, Mrs. Daler, Mrs. Dahl, Miss Dowell, Mr. Gallagher, Mrs. Pelster, Mrs. Trepka, Mrs. Bell, Miss Camonto, Miss Gelfand, and all of the other wonderful teachers that we have at Orva.
In the many years that I've been at Orva, I've always had fantastic teachers. I just wanted to give a really quick shout out to just a few of the many amazing teachers Orva has. Mrs. Camonto, Mrs. Daler, Miss Trepka, Mr. Gallagher, Mrs. Pelster, Mrs. White, Mrs. Relay, Mrs. Spencer, Mrs. Tornquist, and Mrs. Gelfand. You all are so amazing, and all of the other teachers that we have at Orva. We are very fortunate to have you. Thank you so much.
I'd like to make a shout out to Mr. Neal, who is by far my all-time favorite teacher. I've had him for every year that I've had high school so far, and every year he's been completely compassionate, and really he just knows how to connect with his students. And in my first year of having him, he was my advisory teacher, and he really, whatever I changed my mind on for where I wanted to go in life, he was there with me. And in my second year, I had creative writing and LAC2 with him, which was really fun because then I got to have him in two classes, and so we collaborated back and forth for that. And I almost failed one of his classes, but in the very last day, when anything was possible, I connected with him and asked him, I told him that I was sorry for failing one of his classes, and what he did was so amazing. He somehow managed to tell, he talked me through the entire night. I had an F in that class, and by the end of the day, by the time everything was due, I actually had a C, just because he had given me the assignments that I needed to work on that would get my grade up enough to pass it, and I had been able to complete them. It was incredible. He's really awesome. I've had him for AP Lit this year, and he has prepared us so well for the final test, and he understands when we're overwhelmed, but at the same time, he's the kind of teacher who just loves to challenge his students to the point as much as he can without breaking them. And I think that he just is a master of doing that. He helps us learn what we can do, and he helps us reach our fullest potential without going to the point where we're completely dead inside because we don't know what we're doing anymore. And I'm really sad that I'm not going to have him next year, except I will have him for the Lit Mag next year, so that's still good. He's been great for the literary magazine too. He finds all sorts of awesome works of writing that his students come up with, and even just in the group chat that we have on Hangouts for AP Lit, he's fantastic. He talks about philosophy, and he helps people figure it out. He has all sorts of ideas. He's constantly growing as a teacher. He has the philosophy that if you're not growing, then you're falling behind. And I think that's a great philosophy to have, not only as a teacher, but also to pass on to your students, just that it's important to constantly grow. And he's just taught me so much, and he's just been such a great role model for me, and I'm really glad that I got to have Mr. Neal as my teacher.
I would like to just say how much I love my teachers because of how supporting, helpful, and caring they are to me no matter what my situation is and what I need help with. With that being said, I would like to shout out a few teachers who have impacted my life in a positive way. Mr. Neal, Miss Morrison, Miss Dowell, Mrs. Jackson, Miss Dower, Mrs. Spencer, Mrs. Hart, and Mrs. Tell. I would like to thank you guys for being so great.
If there's a teacher you'd like to shout out to, Orva is hosting their 3rd annual Mariposa Awards. Students and learning coaches can nominate a teacher they think has done something great this year. All you have to do is go to tinyurl.com/Mariposa1516 and submit your nomination before 5 p.m. on Thursday, June 2nd. Recipients of the awards will be announced the following week on the Strong Start website. Thanks, guys!
And happy Teacher Appreciation Month!